everybody. Welcome to Fox 9 Sports Now. I am Dawn Mitchell. Tonight we're talking all things Vikings with a very special in-studio guest, Matthew Coller from Purple Insider. You've seen him here before. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's that time of year again.
I am so excited and really desperate for new things to talk about with the Minnesota Vikings. It feels like it's been such a long time since they were on the field.
You know, it has, when you look at the mini camps and everything like that, like we learned everything in such a condensed amount of time. Then there's that break where you kind of miss them maybe.
Oh, I miss them. Absolutely
Yes.
miss them. Miss covering practices, miss covering, camp battles and things like that. In this particular camp is really exciting because I think in past years there were so many veteran players on the team that we pretty much knew what the starting lineup was going to be. And then we were looking at wide receiver 6 or something like who's going to be that 53rd person on the roster. But this year we go in with a new defensive coordinator. A lot of veteran players have left, and there's battles at starting positions, which is just a little bit unusual for this team over the last number of years.
Well, let's stick with the one that we know is a for sure, and it's Kirk Cousins. With the show quarterback, just making him famous, we knew a lot of what we saw on that film. What did you take away from that specifically? You like him more, right?
Yeah, I think that fans got a new respect for Kirk Cousins. I mean, they knew he took a lot of hits last year, but I think what you don't see that they showed you on quarterback was just how you recover from those hits and how much it takes to get on the field on a weekly basis, and then how to even just learn a playbook. We take for granted that Kirk Cousins just knows the playbook and can go out there and operate the offense, but no show has ever taken you to the point where you can see how he has to actually go about learning that, how much effort, how many hours goes into it, and then to go behind the scenes to give a little more personality for Kirk Cousins. And it really stood out, not to spoil it, but the scene where he's riding home after the playoff loss, but it also gives you a little bit of just
you have
how
to take
much
out the trash when he gets home.
Yeah, right. I mean, sort of these are people too, but also
That wasn't laughing that they lost the playoff game.
Right.
I just knew what was coming.
How much it meant to him, though. I think you
Yes.
really saw the agony of losing a
grueling.
playoff game like that,
Yeah,
right?
you
And
know.
how much the whole family plays quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, not just Kirk Cousins.
But also how he can just switch those gears and not take it out on anyone when he gets home and read his son that book, like your heart just was like, oh. But I did like in the huddle, the why whatever, call. I was loving that one. But I would say some of the guys on the offensive line may not have liked those episodes when they saw him getting hit.
Yes. You could tell that it was produced in part by Peyton Manning because he was showing the quarterback's perspective of getting hit quite often. But I do wonder about this offseason and his recovery. He is getting into his mid-30s and how he comes back from that season, but also how the offensive line grows and improves, because last year he did take a lot of hits. In fact, he led the entire NFL in times hit, which the show quarterback really put that on display, how many times he was sacked pretty often. And I think that's a major area where they want to improve is in that pass protection. They're bringing back the entire offensive line, all 5 linemen, which I think can be good for them. They're all high draft picks, but especially at right guard, and Ed Ingram had a tough season last year. Can he develop through this offseason and put together a good camp that gives them confidence that this 5 can protect Cousins better than last year? Because it was a factor, and it certainly impacted the result of the game against the Giants in the playoffs.
All right, let's move on out to wide receiver. We have Jordan Addison. We'll briefly touch 140 miles an hour, a young rookie mistake, right? But he's going to be vying for a spot against KJ Osborne, so he's got to get it together quick, shake that off, and get into camp.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a learning moment for him, and he's lucky it's a learning moment because when you drive 140 miles an hour, as we've seen from some other incidents involving NFL players, that can ruin your career. So he's very lucky that he gets a second chance, and he will need to learn from that. Maturity is a huge part of the NFL, and I think that was a very immature moment from him. But as far as camp goes, it doesn't really impact the reality that it is a battle for him to prove that he should be Justin Jefferson's partner in crime here, because Justin has been paired with Adam Thielen in the past years, and that was a tremendous receiver to be alongside. And so he needs somebody else that is going to take attention away from the defense. Last year, especially at the end of the year, it was all double teams, all clouded coverage over to his side. But let's not forget about KJ Osborne here. I mean, KJ Osborne is somebody this organization has loved since he got here. He's developed into an excellent wide receiver. So if Jordan Addison wants to get those targets, I mean, he's going to have to really earn it, because I think KJ Osborne is, you talk about maturity, but also intelligence, toughness. I mean, he's shown all that. He's been a big play receiver for them at times. So I think that when Addison was drafted, there was an immediate reaction of, oh, he's Justin Jefferson's wide receiver too. And I guess I would say not so fast until he proves it. Right.
And KJ felt not so fast. So KJ knows how to turn it up a notch. I have a feeling we're going to see an even more improved KJ Osborne this time at camp. All right, we're going to hit a break. We'll touch briefly on Alexander Mattison, who's going to back him up, and then we will hit the defensive side of the ball. B-Flow, Brian Flores. His defense is meaner, tougher, more aggressive. Now that's what we want to see, but will we? So we'll break it down. Don't go away.
Guys?
All right, we're back with Matthew Coller, a Purple Insider. Let's just finish up the offense for a little bit. When we have Alexander Mattison, you say goodbye, Dalvin.
Right.
We saw him showing out again on that quarterback show. We know what Dalvin can do, but now it's Deuce and the guys behind him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, at first I think that they really like Alexander Mattison. I think they see him as a 3-down back who can do everything. He can catch out of the backfield, he can pass protect, and he's kind of a tank in there that likes to run over people. But what he doesn't have is that sort of next gear, that elite speed that there are two guys behind him that do. Kene Nwangwu has been one of the best kick returners in the NFL, but has gotten very few opportunities to actually be in the backfield as a running back, and a main part of that is just Dalvin Cook, and almost nobody gets opportunities when Dalvin Cook was there. But now this is a chance for him to really show he can do something. He's got 4.3 speed, track athlete. Can you kind of make that into big plays in the NFL? And then Ty Chandler, who they drafted 2 years ago, he's another guy that they really liked last year in preseason. Last year they drafted him. In preseason, he was excellent. Had a bunch of big plays last season, and I think that they wanted to start getting him on the field. He had an injury in the middle of the year, but another guy that I think they should be excited about. And then their 7th-round pick, Dwayne McBride. If you watch his highlight reel from college, it's really impressive. I think he's very raw, and he might not be a factor right away, but he's also got an opportunity to prove he can be. And one thing we know about running backs is they don't always have to be first-round picks. They can be guys that you never really heard of before, or aren't the highest paid. And I think that's what they're betting on, is they're betting on some guys having opportunities and somebody emerging. But I think right now the majority of the carries would still go very much to the one that they trust, which is Alexander Mattison.
Yeah, and I could talk a half hour more just about the running backs and how it's now looked upon in the NFL, like use them up, throw them out, don't pay them, but that's a whole different show. But let's move on to the defense. Brian Flores is in here, but there's one guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing, because I really like how he's been in mini camps and OTAs. Lewis Cine, who's come back way before anyone thought. But it's not only his physical presence out there, it's his mindset. He is ready to go. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing how he came back from that injury.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought last year when he got hurt against New Orleans early in the season that we wouldn't be seeing him until halfway through this year. And to see him at full strength out in minicamp, what he's got now is an opportunity to truly compete for that starting job. Because last year, Josh Metellus was ahead of him, Cam Bynum was the starter, and Cam Bynum played every snap of last season. So they clearly have a lot of trust in those guys. But last year did not trust the rookie as much at the beginning of the season. And I think maybe he was starting to come along in the middle of the season before he got hurt, and then the injury sets him back. So he's still going to start on the depth chart behind those other guys, and he will have a chance throughout these summer months to prove day in and day out that he's the one that belongs as the starter, and he is the first-round pick for a reason. I mean, he ran a 4.37 40. He's big, as you mentioned. He's a very physical player, came from an elite program in Georgia, so he has the pedigree to be a star safety in this league. But can you master Brian Flores' defense? Because now this this is 2 years in a row where he's having to learn a new defense. And I think that does give an advantage to someone like Cam Bynum and to Josh Metellus, because those guys have been around a little bit longer and are both very high IQ players. So the bar is pretty high for Lewis Cine, but it's great to see him back out there to have a chance at this considering his injury last year.
Yeah, and hey, you're alongside Harry Smith, right? You learn so much by osmosis just out there. Let's move on to the D-line. You know, so many people are saying, hey, we know this offense can score. What's the defense going to do? And it starts up front.
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of people are talking about Brian Flores and his aggressive approach, which you love to see in comparison to Ed Donatel, who I think there are maybe still some complaints about how he dialed up their game plan in the playoffs and so forth. Flores is known as one of the most aggressive, high blitzing defensive coordinators. And I think that's what a young, fast group is going to like, is to go after the quarterback and not make it maybe too complicated. But the defensive line is interesting because we don't know the status of Danielle Hunter. And if you're talking about can they rush the passer, it's a very different conversation if Danielle Hunter is here or not, because he is one of the absolute best in the entire NFL. If he's not here, then it's DJ Wanham, then it's Patrick Jones, then it's young guys trying to get an opportunity, and we really don't know. So he's a huge factor in this whole conversation about the defense.
Oh, I could talk to you for like 2 hours. All right, what's your gut? Do we see Danielle Hunter?
I think we do. I think they get it worked out. Usually when it's Vikings players like this that are of this stature, and also he's not older like some of the other guys they moved on from. But I'm very much 50-50, because if they put him on the trade market, teams will make that phone call.
Oh my goodness. Well, Matthew Coller, Purple Insider, if you don't have it, I would sign up. I've already signed up. I pay my money. I read. I listen. He is the guy to go to. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll see you back out there.
Yeah, we'll see you out
on
there.
Tuesday.
Excited.
Yeah, here we go. It's going to be 2023 Vikings training camp before you know it next week. And you know Fox 9 is your official home of the Vikings. How to get that in. Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
All right, you guys, we'll see you again next time.